The heart monitor screamed once, long and flat, and then the room went painfully still, as if the hospital itself had stopped breathing. 22 doctors stood frozen under the harsh white lights, their gloves stained, their shoulders slumped, their eyes quietly admitting what their mouths refused to say. A young woman lay motionless on the operating table, her skin pale as winter, her chest no longer rising. Outside the glass walls, her mother slid down against the corridor wall, clutching a rosary so tightly her fingers turned white. Somewhere down the hall, a mop bucket rattled as a janitor paused mid-step, sensing something terrible had just happened. Before the story pulls you deeper into this moment, take a second to support the channel. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and unexpected heroes, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, subscribe for more real, emotional stories, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support keeps stories like this alive. The woman on the table was named Emily Carter, 32 years old, a schoolteacher who spent her days shaping young minds and her nights caring for her widowed mother. She had collapsed suddenly at home from a rare and aggressive heart condition no one had known she carried. By the time the ambulance brought her in, her heart was unstable, fluttering like a trapped bird. Over the next 6 hours, 22 specialists rotated through the operating room. Cardiologists, surgeons, anesthesiologists, each brilliant in their own right, each trying everything modern medicine could offer. Shock after shock, medication after medication, procedure after procedure. And yet, Emily slipped further away, like a tide pulling back no matter how desperately people tried to hold the shore. When the final monitor line flattened, the lead surgeon slowly removed his gloves. Years of training, decades of experience, and still there were moments like this that broke even the strongest professionals. One by one, the doctors stepped back, the room heavy with defeat. Paperwork began. Time of death hovered on someone's lips, waiting to be spoken. It was then that the janitor pushed his card a little closer to the open door, his name badge reading Daniel Brooks. Daniel was not supposed to be there. He was just cleaning floors, emptying trash, staying invisible as he always did. He was a single father of an 8-year-old boy named Noah, working nights because they paid a little more and allowed him to be home when his son returned from school. Life had not been kind to Daniel. His wife had died during childbirth, leaving him terrified, grieving, and alone with a newborn. Before becoming a janitor, Daniel had been a combat medic in the army, trained to keep people alive in the worst conditions imaginable, with limited tools and no second chances. When he returned home and life fell apart, he never spoke about that chapter again. The hospital floors did not ask questions. They just needed to be cleaned. As Daniel stood there, something in the scene clawed at his chest. It was not logic or protocol that moved him. It was memory. The memory of a young soldier whose heart had stopped in a desert tent. The memory of a moment when textbooks said it was over, but instinct said to try one more thing. Daniel's hands began to shake as he looked at Emily's still body. He knew what the rules were. He knew the risk. But he also knew what it felt like to walk away and wonder for the rest of your life if you could have done more. Every step he took toward that room felt heavier than the last. Nurses looked up, confused, some irritated. A janitor was not supposed to cross that line. But something in Daniel's eyes made them pause. He did not shout or demand. He simply moved with quiet urgency, setting aside his cart, scrubbing his hands at a sink with muscle memory that had never left him. When he reached Emily, he placed his hands carefully, deliberately, and began a rhythm that came from years of saving lives when no one else could. The seconds stretched unbearably. The room held its breath again, but this time with disbelief and fragile hope. Daniel adjusted pressure, angle, timing, responding not to machines but to the subtle resistance beneath his palms. Sweat dripped down his temple. His mind was filled not with fear, but with his son's face, with the promise he had made to always fight, always try, even when the world said stop. Somewhere behind him, a doctor whispered that it was impossible. Daniel did not hear it, or perhaps he chose not to. Then, faintly, impossibly, the monitor flickered. A stutter, a hesitant blip. One nurse gasped. Another leaned forward, eyes wide. Daniel did not stop. He kept going, refusing to trust the miracle too soon. The blip came again, stronger this time, followed by another. The flat line broke into a fragile, uneven rhythm, like a heart remembering how to beat. Chaos erupted, but it was the kind filled with life. Doctors rushed back in, barking orders, machines were adjusted, medications administered. Emily's chest rose, shallow but real. Her heart, which 22 experts had failed to restart, was beating again under the hands of a man whose job title said janitor, but whose soul remembered how to save the dying. Hours later, as dawn crept through the hospital windows, Emily lay stabilized in intensive care. Her mother wept quietly at her bedside, tears of exhaustion and gratitude soaking into the sheets. Daniel sat alone in a supply closet, his head in his hands, shaking now that the adrenaline had faded. He was certain he would be fired, maybe worse. He did not regret it. Some things mattered more than rules, but the hospital administration saw something different. They reviewed the footage, the reports, the impossible outcome. They learned about Daniel's past, the medic he once was, the father he still was. Instead of punishment, he was offered training, certification, a path back into the medical world if he wanted it. More than that, he was thanked, publicly and privately, for refusing to walk away. Emily woke up days later, confused, weak, alive. When she was told about the man who had saved her, the single dad who cleaned floors at night, she asked to meet him. When their eyes met, there were no grand speeches, no dramatic gestures. Just two people understanding that their lives had intersected for a reason neither could fully explain. If this story is already tightening your chest, if you can feel the weight of that moment when hope almost died, stay with us until the end. Weeks turned into months. Emily recovered slowly, learning to walk again, to trust her heart again. Daniel went back to work, still pushing his cart, still picking up trash, but now people saw him differently. More importantly, he saw himself differently. At home, Noah listened wide-eyed as his father finally told him about being a medic, about saving lives, about never giving up even when the odds are cruel. The boy hugged him tighter that night than ever before. The true miracle was not just that Emily lived. It was that a broken man remembered who he was, that a hospital remembered that titles do not define courage, and that hope can come from the most unexpected hands. Lives rippled outward from that single moment. Emily returned to teaching with a deeper patience and gratitude. Daniel stepped into a future he thought he had lost forever. And somewhere in that hospital, a lesson lingered quietly in the halls, that sometimes the person who changes fate is the one no one is watching. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment now to like the video, share it with someone who believes in humanity, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement tells us these stories matter and helps us bring more hope into the world. Please comment below with the word hope if you believe miracles can still happen through ordinary people. And as the screen fades, remember this. Sometimes the difference between life and death is not knowledge, power, or status, but a tired single dad who refuses to stop trying when everyone else has already walked away. The days after the headlines faded were strangely quiet for Ethan Carter, quieter than before, as if the world had taken a deep breath and was now watching him from a distance. The cameras eventually disappeared. The reporters moved on to newer stories, but the echo of that forest never truly left him. Every morning when he woke up before dawn, making coffee while the house slept, he felt the weight of what had happened settle gently on his chest, not as fear, but as responsibility. People now knew his name. More importantly, his son knew what his father had done. Noah began to see the world differently. He watched his father with a new kind of curiosity, asking questions about the woods, about helping strangers, about whether doing the right thing was always scary. Ethan answered honestly, telling him that fear never really goes away, but you learn to walk forward anyway. Those conversations, whispered at bedtime or shared over simple dinners, stitched something stronger between them. For the first time since his wife's death, Ethan felt like he wasn't just surviving for Noah. He was becoming someone his son could learn from. But life has a way of testing growth. A few weeks later, Ethan was called into his supervisor's office at the repair shop. Business had been slow. Cuts were coming. Ethan listened quietly, nodding, already calculating bills in his head, already preparing himself to be strong. When he walked out carrying a cardboard box with his tools, the old familiar fear returned, sharp and immediate. Being known as a hero did not pay rent. Being kind did not guarantee stability. That night, after Noah fell asleep, Ethan sat alone in the dark living room, staring at nothing, wondering if he had made a mistake by stepping forward at all. The phone rang late, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was a number he did not recognize. On the other end was Eleanor Whitmore's assistant, her voice calm and professional, asking if Ethan would be willing to meet again. This time, it was not for gratitude or publicity. Eleanor wanted to talk about something personal. Ethan hesitated, pride and uncertainty colliding inside him. but in the end he agreed. Something told him this conversation mattered. They met in a quiet community center, far from cameras and boardrooms. Eleanor looked different than she had on television, less polished, more human. She spoke slowly, choosing her words carefully, explaining how the experience in the woods had shattered her sense of control. For years, she had believed money and influence could solve anything. Being lost, injured, and alone had proven otherwise. She had survived because one ordinary man chose to help, not because of who she was, but because she was human. Eleanor told Ethan she wanted to build something lasting, something grounded in real lives. She wanted to open a foundation focused on emergency aid, search and rescue training, and support for families who lived one crisis away from collapse. And she wanted Ethan involved, not as a symbol, but as a voice. Someone who understood what it meant to struggle quietly, to show up without expecting reward. Ethan did not answer right away. He thought of Noah. He thought of the repair shop, of grease-stained hands and predictable days. He thought of the woods and the sound that had changed everything. Saying yes meant stepping into uncertainty again. Saying no meant returning to a smaller life, safer, but dimmer. In the end, he chose the same way he had in the forest. He leaned toward what felt right, even if it scared him. The transition was not easy. Ethan struggled with self-doubt, with feeling out of place in meetings and planning sessions. He stumbled over words, questioned his worth, wondered if he belonged there at all. But slowly, something remarkable happened. His honesty resonated. His stories grounded abstract ideas in reality. Programs were shaped differently because of his input. Help reached people faster. Noah watched his father work late nights not out of desperation, but purpose. Months turned into a year. The foundation grew. So did Ethan. He learned that being strong did not mean being unafraid. It meant continuing anyway. He learned that loss could carve space for compassion, that grief could become a bridge instead of a wall. Most importantly, he learned that the world does not change all at once, but moment by moment, through choices made when no one is watching. One evening, Ethan took Noah back to the edge of the forest. They walked the familiar trail, leaves crunching underfoot, sunlight filtering softly through the trees. They stopped near the place where everything had begun. Noah held his hand tightly, looking around with wide eyes, not afraid, but aware. Ethan felt a quiet gratitude settle over him. The woods were no longer a place of fear or memory alone. They were a reminder of how far they had come. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences simply by choosing compassion, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and stay connected with our channel. Your support helps keep these stories alive. Before the ending, we ask you one special thing. Please comment and tell us if you believe one small decision can truly change a life, and what this story made you feel inside. Ethan Carter never became famous in the way people expected. He became something better. He became proof that even after loss, after fear, after uncertainty, a single act of kindness can open a path forward, not just for one lost woman in the woods, but for countless lives that follow.